I know that you know basically everyone in Moya, Myrna. So let's get to the
I don't, but
questions.
I feel like I do.
Right, so we have a woman who needs no introduction
Yeah.
in our Hispanic Heritage Talk, Myrna Peralta, President and CEO of CentroNia, joins Moya Talks for the third installment of our Hispanic Heritage Series. Myrna, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
I'm honored to be asked.
Right, Myrna, we would like to learn more about your background and personal story.
Oh, wow. Okay. Maybe it would be helpful just to start with sort of my philosophy about life in general, and then I'll share with you how I got to that philosophy. So, and this is a philosophy that's a variation that I'm sure you've heard before. I really believe that all of us, every single one of us, has the capacity to be extraordinary in little ways, in big ways, in unexpected ways. And I've sort of tried to have that be my mantra in many ways. Um, and that comes from, and I've shared this story with, I think Paula might have heard it, but um, my mom was married at 15. At the age of 19, she had 4 children. At the age of 21, she was divorced. At the age of 37, she had 4 children in college at the same time. If that doesn't tell you something about the, I think, genetic resilience that is part of my DNA, which is watching a single mother with 4 children at the age of 21, basically saying, I don't like the situation I'm in. I can do better by myself. And this is in the 1950s. And watching her work 2 jobs a day, basically leaving our, dinner ready so that by the time, we got home from school, we fixed our own little meals. And I became sort of the mother substitute because mom was working in the evenings also. And that you make it work. Um, my mom was a little bit tyrannical. Everybody had their duties. Everybody did them for fear of God. um, and she only had sort of one tool in her toolkit of parenting, which is I'll beat the shit out of you if you don't do what I tell you to do. I mean, that was basically her. Okay, and we all knew she was dead serious, so we tried to act accordingly. Uh, in every family, though, there's somebody who decides to test the waters, and that was me. And so every few days I got my lickings in, and and that was okay. I knew what was coming when I made my decisions to, stay out late or not do my chores. I knew what was coming, and so I've sort of led my life saying, you know the rules. If you break them, there are consequences. And when those consequences come down upon you, don't moan and groan about it. Suck it up and, acknowledge it and move on. So that's sort of me in everything I do and the way I approach life and work and family and friends and everything else. How's that?
Excellent. That's a great story.
And I was born in New Jersey, so that New York and Jersey. So I am a city girl, in and out,
With an attitude.
with an attitude. Yeah.
And how did you start working on policy and advocacy?
I actually started. I have my master's in social work, and when I finished my master's, which I did at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, talk about being a fish out of water. But I came back to DC and went to work for, I went to actually work. My very first job was at a child development center, the Spanish Education Development Center. But quickly moved to work with the Red Cross and did a lot of on the ground disaster work, and really saw how policy and evaluation and all of those things that we think will have a good result when you operationalize them really fell short. And so I took it upon myself to basically, raise hell and and challenge the powers that be, and become a pain in the butt to everybody, so that they finally moved me to management, and finally said, okay, you tried to make it better. And that sort of started me on the road about thinking about sort of policy and advocacy, and the connection that has to happen between policymakers and those who actually implement things on the ground.
And did the switch or the focus to education and childcare came organically, or was it a conscious decision? Like focusing
No, it was a total
advocacy
fluke.
and education.
No, there was nothing organic about it. There was nothing planned. At the time, I had my own consulting firm, and was actually doing a lot of work in the housing and community development area, and in the training. I did a huge, for almost 15 years, I did a diversity training, cultural competency training, worked with boards, worked with staff, and CentroNia, which at the time was called Calvary. I knew the exec, the founder, and over the years, she had pulled me in to do multiple projects. As I told folks, I would sort of swoop in, do my thing, and leave, then swoop back in and leave, and did that for many years. When she was tapped by the new mayor, oh my God, his name just, Gray. When Mayor Gray was elected, he unexpectedly asked her to serve as his deputy mayor for Health and Human Services. And since it hadn't been anticipated, she had been with the organization. She founded it and been with it for 25 years. And so the idea of just sort of up and the mayor wanted a response right away. I need to know if you, and I don't want you to tell anybody until you make a decision, because I want to be able to announce it. So, of course, she was going to say yes, but the transitioning and what was going to happen with the organization was most pressing for her. So she came to me and said, listen, I need you to step in on a temporary basis, just to keep the ship afloat while the board does a search for a new CEO. And she goes, the board knows you, the staff know you, everybody here knows you, and that should make the transition, my leaving, easier. So I sort of said, okay, I can do a 6-month gig. And 10 years later, I'm still here. And so the board had wanted to do the board wanted to be able to make an announcement, our founder is leaving and going to this press, the deputy mayor, and we've already have our new CEO, blah, blah, blah. And I said to them, guys, for the last 20 years, we've been dating. You want to get married. I said, you want me to move in? I said, we need to give each other an opportunity to see, would this marriage work? I said, so I think we should do this sort of temporary and interim to see if it would work on a different basis than it has for the last 20 years. And they agreed. Around a month into the job, I said, oh, I kind of like this. And it happened when I attended my first quote unquote graduation of our pre-K. And I walked into our La Plaza, our meeting, our conference area, and 100 voices of 3- and 4-year-olds said, "Good morning, Miss Myrna." And I went, oh my God. I mean, I was actually surprised by my own reaction to, and I said, oh, this is really what this is about. It's not my sitting in the office and doing the budget and, pulling my hair out about, this or that. This is what this is about. And at that moment, I knew I was going to be staying.
I know the feeling. I work as a teacher for 17 years.
Yeah.
I started when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
So I understand the feeling of watching these people grow.
So yeah, so my 6-month gig turned into something else.
Did you get a good prenup?
No. I was ill prepared, okay?
So recently, you were at the White House.
Yes.
With President Harris.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How was that conversation? Because Paola has been super silent about it.
Oh, Paola. Okay. So, well, it was a little bit different for me because Vice President Harris had been here a few months ago. And so we had met, we'd had opportunity to exchange a few words. She spoke to our children. She toured our facility. She went into one of the classrooms and read to the children. So this was like sort of my second shot at her. But what I found interesting about it is the fact that she brought all her key staff in to the room. It's one thing if a politician, if you're called in, especially to the White House and a meeting with the vice president, and you sort of say what you have to say and then don't have a sense of, is this going anywhere? And I think the fact that quite a few of her staff were there, and on at least several occasions, she said to either me or to one of the other invitees, I'm going to have my staff, and would point to it, make a notation of this and follow up. And so that was what I stood out to me, that she was not so much that she was going to do anything, but that I now had a direct link, and I went up to the person afterwards and got their information. For at least someone who has her ear, who I can say, you know what, as the administration is looking at A, B, C, D, don't forget X, Y, Z. Okay. So that to me was the strongest, other than the fact that she's just so personable and warm on a one-to-one basis.
So you could talk about the investment in childcare.
Oh yeah, and she, when she was here, we spent a really good time, sort of 5-10 minutes going through, if I had my top 3 to 5 requests, what would those be? One of the things that I have said to her and her staff, which is the current legislation that focuses on childcare, is focusing on 2 things. One is the supports to parents to make it more affordable, and the teacher compensation issue, which are both really important. But I keep reminding them that if I can't open the doors, the parents don't need help, because they're not gonna, they're not gonna have the child care. And so there needs to be some kind of realization that the day-to-day life of a operating child care center is really complicated. And even if we are able to match our revenues with what it costs to, and what we get from our parents, we can probably get to those two, which is how much we're charging parents and the and how much they're paying us. There are costs that are not factored into most child care centers, parent fees, and those operating costs. If I was to charge for real cost of operating a child care center, I would be charging parents $30,000. That's what it costs me. Our parents, our full tuition parents, are paying around $23, $24. I have to fundraise the rest of that per child. So if you figure I have to raise $6,000 per child to meet operating costs, and I'm serving 700 children, do the math.
Yeah, for the interview, I was doing the math on that, and I was wondering, because it's 24,000 per children in DC,
and that's to cover teachers' salaries, supplies in the classroom, the furniture in the classroom, but it doesn't cover our rent, our insurance. I remind folks, for our center alone, I pay $130,000 in insurance costs. That's just my insurance premium. Yeah. That's just insurance premiums. We offer benefits to our staff, which we think it's an 80-20 split, which we think is fairly generous compared to many others. And we have matching 401ks. We try to do everything we can to keep the staff we have. But there's no way that we could charge our parents what it actually cost us. And so we depend heavily on donations and grants and corporate support and all of that.
Interestingly, because President Biden's childcare focuses on capping the cost, right? Is what you say.
It's cost of parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that if a parent is charged, $24,000 a year, they would not. They would be responsible for 7% at the top end of it.
Yes.
And so that still doesn't help us.
Yep.
When my actual costs are 30, right?
There's a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And unlike most people, most public services, we live and die by reimbursements. So I offer the service, and let's assume that it's subsidized and we have a contract with the city. We provide the service, we bill the city for our low-income parents, and then we have to wait 45 days to get paid. Well, when I have a monthly budget of over a monthly payroll of over $700,000 a month, I have to carry the cost of waiting to be reimbursed. And most child care centers work on a reimbursement basis, unless you're a private private childcare.
It's a conundrum because in the end, like not having accessible childcare hurts the rest of the economy.
Sure it does. Oh yeah. Yeah.
You cannot go to work, you have longer maternity leaves or paternity leaves, you exclude people from the workforce.
One of the real challenges for us, and I think as a society also, is the fact that we think about childcare as a problem for parents. Well, that's not really true. If so how do you motivate a millennial who doesn't have children? Okay. Oh, that's not my issue. That's not my problem. Okay. I mean, that's a real sort of philosophical question. What responsibility do I or anybody, it doesn't have to be a millennial, it could be an older person. I don't have children. Okay. Or my children are already adults, or they're in high school. I don't have anybody in pre-K. So folks, that's your problem, not mine. Okay. And that's not an unreasonable request. It's how do we make the case to non-child rearing individuals that it's important to support programs that offer this service, because it really is about how do you keep the economy going. How do you make sure that employers have their employees can do the work, that this supply chain problem isn't compounded by facts that people can't report to work, that those who do have children can't come to work because they don't have any child care. And so if you believe like I do that we're all connected, that whether you have children or not, the challenge of child care is a societal problem, not a parent problem.
And there is a gender issue that compounds the problem. Because whatever advances we have, it's on women normally who have to, all the elderly.
Yeah. Oh, I have met so many fathers who are like, oh, please let me get back to work. Okay. I mean, they've been at home with an infant and a toddler and the element, and they're going crazy. They're not, I mean, the level of emotional investment that just having a child around you 24/7 it's a unique world to live in, and women have managed to be doing it forever. Okay. And I think that a lot of fathers are saying, oh my. So I think that's actually one of the collateral good things coming out of the pandemic, which is, I think, fathers have really stepped up. But in stepping up, I think they've also then realized that what it takes. Yeah.
Okay, I had just one last question before opening the floor, because as an educator, I was fascinated by what CentroNia does with children and trying to integrate bilingual children, monolingual children, first generation, third generation. So I wanted to know, how does this affect the children development?
Okay, I'm trying to figure out sort of which angle to take in responding, because
I can narrow it more, because my concern is, how do you train your teachers and educators to treat that diversity in the same class?
So well, one is that you begin to that your employee base reflects who you serve, right? And so 70% of our children are first generation Latino, from Latino families, and our staff, our personnel reflect that same constituency in many ways. And because I feel very strongly about having staff that our children can look at and see themselves in, we have around 15 to 20% of our children are Amharic speaking. And so, we've got 6 or 7 Ethiopian educators who speak Amharic and who can bridge that cultural divide and help the rest of us bridge that cultural divide. And we've got probably another, 15% that are African American, and once again, our staff reflects that. The idea of bilingual education, and I think people don't really understand how that happens. All of our teachers in every classroom speak both languages that are dominant in those classrooms. And it isn't like they sit down and said, okay, we're going to do Spanish, this morning only. No, they're talking to the children in both languages simultaneously. And everything in the room is in both languages. And so and children pick that up immediately. I mean, they distinguish what language you're talking to them in. And it's really amazing that if you talk to a child, a 2-year-old who's just learning in Spanish, they answer in Spanish. And then if you switch to English, they switch to English. And their brains are developing that capacity. So they do it just naturally. It's much tougher with the parents. I mean, the parents are the tough ones. If they don't speak any English and the teacher they're dealing with is dominant in English, and so getting those communications. But with the children, it's easy, and because they pick it up immediately. I mean, we have a child who is 4 years old and is fluent in 4 languages. The mother is from Ethiopia. The father is from France. And he's getting English and Spanish because everything in our classrooms is Spanish for the most part, because so many children are from. And this child just sort of switches from one to the other without blinking an eye.
That's pretty cool.
Really amazing. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I could monopolize you for hours, but I need to open the floor and allow staff ask questions. I know Paula has one.
Ask away.
As designers for childcare centers, Myrna, and of course elementary school, what some advices can you give us to be more intentional in our design?
God, I should have put a plant. I should have given you that question in writing, because one of the conversations I have with folks who we work with on the design of childcare centers is, and instinctively, I think you would go to what would be the child, what do we want for this child to really appreciate this design that I'm creating? And, my message is forget the child. It's the parent we have to not only impress, because you want them to say, oh, I love this center, right? But it's also the way that they learn about how to design the space in which they live with their children. So it's really about designing from a parent's perspective as opposed to a child's perspective. I mean, clearly, the issue of putting everything as close to the ground as possible, because that's the world that they live in, is important. But overall, it's the parents that we have to impress from a design point of view.
The worst part of teaching are the parents.
Mm-hmm.
And you were mentioning that in the classrooms, when we were chatting, that the classrooms do not have to go into that route because it's where the kids are staying for the most part.
They don't have to do what?
They hasn't have to be as elaborated as, like they say, the front desk or things like that, because the kids do not care about that.
Yeah, sort of the classrooms themselves, from a best practices and from a how children learn developmentally, that is pretty laid out. You know, you want your circle time, you want your little books, you want your toys. I mean, that's pretty standard now. I think the wow factor and the ability to be creative is almost better outside the classroom than in the classroom. You try to be too creative inside the classroom, and your program monitor is going to say, you know, what are you doing with that here, and take that out, and you need more of this, and you need more of that, because they're very constrained in what they absolutely want to see in a classroom. Yeah.
Thank you, Myrna.
Myrna, this has been wonderful. We really appreciate your time.
I'm here.
Any more questions, people? You're too shy.
This is actually more fun.
Section.
This is actually much more fun doing it in person.
I have one small question, but why you choose DC from New York or New Jersey? Why you came to this area?
Oh, I actually came to DC to go to college. I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist, and in Tacoma Park they had one of the preeminent Adventist schools. And so I went. I chose to. I didn't pick DC. I picked the school that just happened to be in Tacoma Park, Maryland.
I thought it was maybe related to your desires to drive policy and kind of this is the area.
Oh no, no, nothing that aspirational. No.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. It passed like a breeze.
Okay. Well, you know where to find me. And,
Thank you, Myrna. I appreciate it. We want to be mindful with your time as we block 30 minutes for our.
Oh, that is so cute. Somebody had a clapping thing on there.
Yes, Tanya.
Yes.
That was so cute. I had.
Can we do it again, everyone? Let's do a virtual
I don't know
clap
how
for
to do it.
Myrna.
You go
Thank
to the.
you all.
I'll
You're
just
all
do it like this.
welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Myrna.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Myrna.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Myrna.
Thank you.